back to another session of Tea with B. Welcome back to another session of Tea with B. Today's episode topic theme is going to be about culture clashes. I've just gone live on Instagram, so we're going to start recording. And we'll start waiting for the questions to see what everybody wants to talk about on this topic, and then we'll go from there. But hi guys! Welcome to Tea with B, and let's pour the tea. I hope everyone has like some form of drink with them. Tea, coffee, water, whatever it is. Hi, Mum Life? Hi! Hi, baby! Let's pour the tea and let's get going. Hi, Alexa! Hi, Malada. I'm so sorry if I say your names wrong. Alright. Pour the tea. Let me know if you guys are having tea with me. Alright. Hey, sis! You have tea. You're so happy to be here. I'm so happy you're here. Hi. You've made tea. I love the people that are saying they're having tea. I performed to, your Shakespeare thing. That's so good. That's awesome. Pepsi, and if someone's having Pepsi, come in. That's good. Hand you one through the screen here. Satan. Alright guys, today's topic of conversation. I'm recording it for you guys, so it'll be on YouTube if you miss anything or anyone that can't join. Hi from France, hi! Today's topic of conversation is culture clashes. So if you guys have any questions about culture, about, people like myself coming from a mixed background, I think I can see someone saying the Palestinian Irish, I can't see, I think that's the Iraqi flag, I'm not sure. Be right back, about to get tea, yes! But let's talk about culture clashes. The last 3 episodes, I have been talking about anything and everything. So I had it as a free-for-all, and I basically said, I'm open to any conversations. But this time I want to start theming them so we can kind of not, I feel like every week I'm talking about the same things on loop, and I don't want to get annoying with the repetitive nature of it on YouTube. So yeah. Let's try and focus on just one topic from today. From Livia, hi! School is starting, that's okay. I'm recording it and I'll post it up on YouTube when, before, sometime this week. Thanks, Zahra. Alright, so, someone sent in a question, but it's not to do with the theme. I'll answer it quickly, and then I'll start focusing on culture clashes. So, someone asked, maybe I think I can put the question up, I'm not sure. No, I don't think I can put it up. Advising me about whether I think they should change from nursing to teaching. And my advice for anybody that wants to do teaching, I really feel like you've got to make sure that it's something you're really passionate about, because it's not the easiest field to be in. Now, I'm sure the same could be said about nursing. But yeah, if it's not something that you're not passionate about, I don't really recommend. I'm just going to turn the heater off because it's getting really warm now. But yeah, make sure you go and maybe do some trial days or something, and you really just try and figure out whether or not this is something that you could enjoy long term. All right. Thank you, Ezra. You didn't have to do that. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to kickstart culture clashes, right? So my parents are from different backgrounds. As for many of you that are have been following me, you've seen my videos and I talk about it. So my father is from Ireland, and my mother is from Palestine. She's from Palestine. So my mom's family, for context, they were originally from Haifa in Palestine. And then after the war broke out, they moved they sought refuge in Lebanon. And then my father's family are from Ireland. And then just like my mom's family, they've eventually come and migrated to Australia for a whole bunch of reasons. And then they've met in Australia and had me. And so with the result now, you guys see me making videos about what it's like having parents from different backgrounds, right? So there's your context. So culture clashes, the biggest thing I find as someone with parents from a different background, where there's a huge tension or huge issues of difference would have to be things that come from maybe religion. I know in my experience, like I know not everyone's experience is going to be the same, but in my experience, my Arab family tend to be a lot more religious in their approach as opposed to my Irish family. Now, whilst Ireland is known for having, you know, quite a Catholic history, they in my experience, they've become very how shall I say, progressive in their approach to life, especially in my family anyway. So the biggest culture clash for me growing up would have to be the approach when it comes to religion. But I'll go more in detail with that as we keep talking. I just want to see what, you know, people want to talk about. Culture clashes happens here in Libya, even between different cities. It's even happened in different neighborhoods in Tripoli. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. So I know, like even within countries, especially in countries where the culture is, you know, very rich in its history and very established, there will definitely be differences from area to area. I've heard about that one before very much. Thanks, Ezra. I really appreciate it. All right, let's go down. British Irish here. Your video speaks so much truth. Egyptian American and British Irish. Oh, I love that. So you would have such a similar experience to me when it comes to the cultural background. Your voice resembles Priyanka Chopra. Really? Doesn't she have like a Desi accent? I can't remember off the top of my head, so I can't actually, I'll go and have to listen to it afterwards. But I'm pretty sure her accent is so different to mine. Is attending church more often one of your priorities? No. My priorities when it comes to my relationship with God is more on a personal basis. I like going to church, don't get me wrong, I do. Especially when I go to, when I've shared with you places like St. Mary's Cathedral in the city. I love doing that. But it's not my priority right now to go regularly. And I assume, Karim, you're asking about going every Sunday. My focus at the moment is on building that relationship privately. You were good with curly hair. Thanks. In other words, you don't like it. That's all right. That's fine. I see where we're going with this. I lived in Morocco for several years. A culture clash is a real thing, especially from east to west. Definitely. I'm British Pakistani and culture clashes are so crazy. I love British food, but I'm so desi. It's crazy. Pakistani lives in my soul. Yeah. So I often felt when I was living in London, for example, being mixed, especially because I'm Irish, right? So the cultures, whilst they're very different, they're rather similar when it comes to being in England. So I have one level of comfort, especially as someone that's Australian. I have double the level of comfort being in London. But when you want to try and relate with your Arab culture, it was really difficult. And then for anyone who's from London in particular, I'm sure you're going to understand what I'm saying. Going and finding places like Edgware and being able to connect with your culture in certain areas where there are other people from a similar background, and you're able to find people that are having, have restaurants or shops, etc., where you can connect with your food and with your clothing and the groceries and things like that is awesome. It's that was my saving grace when I was living in London. I remember my dad and I so much, we kept going to Edgware. Actually, we lived in Edgware for the most part, just to try and find the foods that I loved and that I missed and everything like that. We make it, what's my favorite holiday season? Christmas. I adore Christmas on another level. I find Christmas is amazing. It just makes me so happy. I think the biggest culture clashes with my family were church and family gatherings. Okay, let's talk about that. Culture clashes when it comes to church. Now, in my religion, obviously, it's going to be church. In another religion, it might be a temple or a mosque, etc. Right? So for me, it would be to do with church. Now, my mum's family, now not necessarily namely my mother personally, but my mum's family generally, I'm going to speak from a general perspective. My mother's family would be very much sticklers when it comes to religion, especially my teta, my Arab grandmother. She goes to church almost every day. until now, my grandmother is at church almost every morning. Usually she won't have breakfast until she's gone to church, she said her prayers, etc., and then she'll come back. And then she'll break her fast, right? So, growing up, I could definitely see how for my Arab family, that was a major priority. Then when I've gotten into touch with my Irish family and I've better connected with them, I've realized it's not a priority for them at all. They are so chill. Their main priority in life is being a good person and, you know, making sure that they just live with the best of intentions, etc. And they're loving life. So I've just also remembered I haven't had a single drink of my tea yet. All right. Is my mother's family Catholic or Orthodox? Actually, my mom's family and my dad's family are both Catholic. Now, my father's family, being Irish, are Roman Catholic, and my mother's family are Melkite Catholic. So being from the Middle East, that sect is very much obviously from the Middle East. So essentially, I am Catholic. I was baptized Melkite Catholic, so I took from my mother's church, but yeah, we're Catholic at the end of the day. Both my families are Catholic. Where are we? Half Palestinian, half Lebanese, grew up in America, and nobody wants to accept me. Why? Nobody wants to accept you in the sense, because I'm assuming it's not in terms of your own personal mix. I get a lot of people saying when they're from a completely different cultural backgrounds and they're mixed, that they feel like they're not accepted from either side, right? But I assume in your comment, you're referring more to the fact that you feel not accepted in America. Find communities where you can better connect with if that's something that's becoming a point of concern for you. I have no idea about America's geography in terms of where the demographics lie, but I'm sure you could find areas where there is a lot of your community if you wanted to better connect with your culture in that way. Especially like through Arab TikTok, right? When I see people on Arab TikTok, I see a lot of them that are in America. So I'm sure there's got to be a big community there somewhere. But if you are referring to within, your Palestinian and Lebanese culture, I doubt you are, because we are almost the same, different in some ways, but pretty much very similar for the most part. But I'm sure that there would be some way in that regard that you'd be able to find some happy medium between the two. But yeah, look for communities in America where you can connect socially and maybe build even a social circle for yourself where you guys can all relate and embrace your culture together. What do you think about India? Okay, so I have quite an extensive experience with Desi culture, and seeing as we're talking about culture, my favorite thing about that part of the world I'm not just talking about India now, I'm talking about like Pakistan, Bangladesh. I would love the way you guys dress. I adore the way you guys dress. Even until now, it's when I see it pop up on my socials and I see people getting ready from the Desi world, I see them getting ready for their weddings and stuff. I think it looks so beautiful. So when people ask me like, what do you think about this? It's such a general question, so I'm not sure specifically what context you're referring to, but I think I definitely have got to say something about picking something that's my favorite, and I would have to say that their traditional dress is amazing. I love the way they get dressed. I'm around 20 to 25% Dutch, 55 to 60% Irish, and the rest is unknown, but I found my Irish side is very religious. Yeah, this is the thing. That's why I mentioned earlier at the start, my Irish family personally, whilst they're Catholic, they're not the most religious people in the world, in comparison to my Arab family anyway. But in Ireland, that's not to say that the Irish aren't religious. Ireland is very much known for being a very Catholic nation, especially the older generation. They hold tight to their Catholic side, but in the younger generation, like I remember when I was over there for Christmas the last time, and I remember I went with my dad's family friends, and we went to church for Christmas. We went to midnight mass, and I remember my dad's generation, so his family friends, they were quite adamant going to church and praying and doing everything quite ritualistically. And then I remember the younger generation, so around my generation, like the parents were lucky to even get them there. They didn't really want to be there, and the ones that did were quite, they went, but they were quite calm in their approach. They weren't very as into it as their parents. Now, that is my experience. I'm sure there would be other parts of Ireland that are not like what I experience. In fact, I remember one year, for anyone who's Irish, I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about. One year when I was competing in the Rose of Tralee. So for anyone who's Irish, yes, I took part in that in the Sydney one. I did it a few years ago when I came back from Ireland. My dad's cousin, she messaged me one day. She's like, "Oh my God, please, you need to take part in the Rose of Tralee. Like, it would really suit you. I think you'd get along so well with it." And I loved it. It was a great experience. It was so much fun. I didn't win, but I enjoyed every minute of it. It was amazing. And anyway, the reason I'm mentioning this is because I remember meeting a couple of girls there that were migrants from Ireland, like my generation, but they weren't they're the migrants, not their parents. And I remember quite a few of them being very, very Catholic. So like I said, just because, in my experience personally, they haven't been as religious as my Arab family, for a comparison, that's not to say that they're not, because Ireland is very much known for their Catholic side, their Catholic nature, I should say. She knows a little Arabic and can read it slowly. Yeah. So when someone must have asked if I can. I can't speak Arabic fluently. I know a couple of words. I know enough to try and figure out or pinpoint the idea of a conversation, but I definitely couldn't get even half of it. But I know enough to try and gauge the topic of conversation. And I definitely can read it, but extremely slowly. So I don't know why, but I found reading Arabic really easy to pick up, and it's actually learning how to speak it that I found more challenging. Not sure why, probably because I'm a very logical person when it comes to learning, and I found reading it quite logical. Like, it was just a logical thing. I understood the rules, and it made sense for me. All right. I'm not sure, Kareem, what you're saying. I'm not sure what you're saying in that. You think being chilled. Sorry, chilled about religion is not progression. Yeah, look, it depends what side of the table you sit on. Like, it depends. Everyone's I've been saying all day in my Instagram stories. To each their own, right? Like, it genuinely just depends on what you value, what's important to you. I'm not going to sit here and push my own ideologies, my own beliefs. But yeah, I get where you're coming from as well, Kareem. All right, let's scroll down. Thanks, Roman. Inshallah, same to you. Thank you so much. Wait, hang on. I just mistake my... Okay, here we go. Is your paternal grandmother religious at all? All right, seeing as I'm trying to keep... I feel like maybe you guys prefer if we just talk about whatever. But I definitely think I'm gonna need to try and, at least for today's session, focus on just the theme of culture clashes. But yeah, is your paternal grandmother religious at all? Let's put that into the context of culture clashes. So I already mentioned how my teta, my Arab grandmother, is extremely religious. My paternal grandmother, so my father's mom, my Irish grandmother, she is religious. She's probably the most religious person in my Irish family. Aside from myself, she's definitely actually the most religious one. But nothing in comparison to my teta, my Arab grandmother. Like, literally, the scale, they're on opposite ends. She definitely believes in God. She definitely prays privately, and she definitely believes in, typical Catholic things like the rosary and saints and things like that. But in terms of going, like my teta, going to church every single morning almost, they're not in that regard. No, not at all. All right. My partner and I come from different cultures, and I always think about raising our future children in a mixed culture family. How do you suggest we balance the both in terms of language and culture? Okay, I love that you asked this question, Jen. This is an awesome question because not only do I have an knowledge and understanding of this topic personally, but it's also something I had to consider once in my life. So first, let me talk to you about the kid that grew up with parents from different cultural backgrounds. My biggest advice about balancing is make sure that both cultures are a priority. And it's probably the most obvious answer, but it's so true. Don't let one culture dominate over the other, because not only is it disrespectful to the other culture, you know what will happen, and at least this was my experience anyway. The child will end up feeling a void in it's their identity, and the child will end up feeling a void, and they're going to chase after it anyway. So growing up, I knew I was half Arab, half Irish, but my mother wasn't the most proud person. And growing up, she didn't really enforce the embracing of that culture. My teta, my jiddo, her parents, my grandparents did, but not so much her. So when I left home, although it was something that I had out of both my cultures the most exposure to, it was definitely something that I felt I didn't have enough knowledge of. So when I left home, I started doing things like going and learning Arabic at university. I started taking belly dancing classes. I started trying to learn dabke with my friends, and my Arab friends, we started going out more to Arab restaurants. And then I was regularly, and I still do this, regularly going to visit my teta for extended periods of time so she could teach me how to cook our traditional dishes. I started doing so much research on our cultural clothing. I became so obsessed in immersing myself in that void that I felt and filling it. And then as I got older, once I did that, that was a few years after I ran away from home, then I started with my Irish culture. Now, my Irish culture, especially my Irish family, I should say, especially with my father, he's very proud to be Irish. I mean, very proud. My father is the most patriotic one in this family. I don't know about if more patriotic than me, but he's definitely the most patriotic person in the family other than me. My dad's so proud to be Irish now. And so that wasn't taken away from me, but I hadn't grown up with it. I didn't grow up with my father, no fault of his own before anyone asks, but I didn't grow up with my dad. So I then now, after spending years filling that Palestinian Middle Eastern void, I decided to start working on the Irish side. And I started doing things like, going to Ireland with my father. I started going and immersing myself in the culture more, like, for example, that competition I mentioned, the Rose of Tralee. I started doing more research on the symbology that is important to the Irish culture. Things like, the shamrock or like the whole bunch of Celtic symbols. And then I even started buying things like the flags and all of that and started putting up in my room. So without that balance, you're going to find that the child is probably going to be rather resentful of being robbed of a part of their identity. So definitely, I feel like the main takeaway from that is going to be, you got to prioritize both cultures. And in terms of language, if it's possible, teach the kid both. Teach your child how to speak both of them if you can. Now, I suppose if the partners don't speak both the same languages, perhaps that might be a bit of an issue. I'm not sure how to tackle that one. But I have seen it before where parents teach the kid more than one language from such a young age. Children absorb so much knowledge when they're young. They don't have that self-doubt yet. They don't have that ability to sit there and go, oh, I can't do that, because they're so riddled with self-doubt like adults do. Adults tend to struggle learning instruments more than children do. Same like languages, purely because of that self-doubt, right? In children, they'll just absorb. They're like a sponge. They just absorb whatever it is that you give them. So yeah, just try and teach them as much as you can, languages, food, traditions, everything. I promise you later, when they're older, they'll have such a strong sense of identity, and they'll be so proud of their heritage. I hope that answers your question. All right. Is Musa also Malkite Catholic? No, Musa is Orthodox. He's an Orthodox Christian. So, but the thing is that for anyone that doesn't know, the Malkite church originally was from the Orthodox Church. So my church's history does originally come from the Orthodox Church, and then we branched off and then created our own church. So my teta always likes to try and talk about it as in a way when people are like, what's the Malkite Church? Because it's not that well known. Usually not outside of the Middle East anyway. So my teta often likes to say, oh, our church, yeah, it's like half Orthodox and half Maronite. So the Maronite Church, which is like the predominant Christian church in Lebanon, and then mix that with the Orthodox Church, and that's kind of how you get the Malkite Church. And we're very, very similar to the Orthodox Church in our practices. All right, let's see. Do you know about Turkey? Berna is a popular name there. Yeah, I actually didn't know that Berna was a popular name in Turkey until I started putting it on social media. And then people straight away started telling me about it. And I actually follow this in an influencer from Turkey whose name is Berna. And so like now I definitely know. But I don't know much about Turkey other than very basic things. My father was there recently, so I got to see a lot of it through his lens. But aside from, you know, the landscape being really beautiful and how a lot of the time through the culture, a lot of people try to just associate everyone in the Middle East as being one and the same. But actually how uniquely different the Turkish culture is to the rest of us Arabs, for example. So that's probably all I really know. Like I know that we have similarities, but there's also some quite beautiful, beautifully unique things. For example, when I was at my speech the other night, if she's on this live, she's going to know what I'm talking about. When I was at that speech the other night in Melbourne that I was talking to you guys about, I knew immediately that the lady sitting next to me was Turkish purely by the way that she'd wrapped a hijab. So I know a few things. I know a couple of little things, but nothing in detail. Thanks, Wendy. I got it done the other day. It'll be back to curls as soon as I wash it, though. Hi, Rabs. Thank you. As a Desi person, I also love our traditional clothing. I must be so far behind into the comments. I'm so sorry. All right, let's go back up. I love Turkish drama. I really want to go one day, inshallah. I would love, inshallah, to go and visit Turkey. It looked so stunning, especially in Cappadocia, or Cappadocia. I'm not sure which way I'm pronouncing it right. I would love to go. But in terms of the Turkish drama, I am probably the only person in the Arab community that hasn't watched Turkish dramas. This is something I've just never had the time to get into it. And everyone tells me how much I'm missing out on, and I well believe it, but I just haven't had the time. Thanks, Cool Oceans. Thank you so much. Growing up with your Palestinian side, how did you navigate cultural differences with your non-Arab friends? I didn't, actually. So growing up, my mom is a very strict person. She might not be the proudest Arab, but in terms of how she raises her children, she is quite strict. So I didn't navigate anything because, like as you're asking me, you know, how did I navigate it? Either the cultural differences. I didn't navigate it. I was just literally removed from any scenario that my mother considered culturally unacceptable. I was removed from it and not able to take part in it at all. So, for example, school camps. I think I was allowed to go on about two. Wait, let me think. Maybe three. One in primary school and two in high school. But the two in high school was because I went to an all-girls school, and even then, that was really pushing it. And in primary school, I remember that was only because my principal begged my mum. In the end, my principal literally took my mum aside and was like, she hasn't gone on any of the other school camps. Like, can you let her go? Anyway. But yeah, so in general, things like the school disco. So in high school, there was a school disco every year, and I was let go to the very first one. And then when my mum got wind of how it went, I was never let go again. I was never allowed to hang out with my friends after school. I was never allowed to have a phone, until I was much, much older. Everyone had phones for years before I ever did. I wasn't allowed to have social media until I was in my 20s. So like I was never let to try and compromise or balance the differences in the Australian culture versus my Arab culture. There was no navigating. It was just our way and that was it. And if there was no way of doing our way in a certain context, I was plucked from the scenario. All right. I know, I need to get more. I need to look. It's school holidays in there 4 weeks in Australia. I get 2 weeks off. But I don't get 2 weeks off from content creation, but I do get 2 weeks off from teaching. So I will definitely try and see if I can make time for it. We'll see. As a fellow Christian, I'm inspired by your dressing style. I want to start dressing modestly. Can you suggest how to begin? I love that. Oh my God. Okay. Honestly, you've got to do whatever makes you feel comfortable. Spend some time in your room. Start trying on different things and see what you like. Now, I can make suggestions based on what I feel is modest for myself, but my standard is going to be different from, say, yours or anyone else's. So spend some time at home figuring out what makes you feel comfortable. And remember, it's not it's not a one size fits all approach. So what you might enjoy doing in your approach to modesty might be different from the next person. So don't force the issue. Don't do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable or makes you feel like you're not being true to yourself. Just figure out what you're happy with. It's that simple. I remember in the beginning when I first announced it, I first made that one video where I was like, I'm thinking, I didn't say I definitely was. I just said, I'm thinking about going and doing starting a modest fashion journey, guys. And now trying to keep that in the context of cultural clashes. In my Irish culture, that's not really something you would hear people talk about. However, in my Arab culture, it is. But in my Arab culture, especially in the Arab communities, most of my Arab friends, most of my Arab female friends, I should say, are Muslim. So their idea of modesty is very different to me as a Christian, right? And especially online when I advertised it, and a lot of my audience is from the Middle East. And I think a lot of people viewed, when I announced that I wanted to start this modest fashion journey, viewed it through that lens, through that cultural religious lens, which isn't what I meant as a Christian, right? So at first, I felt a lot of pressure when I first started, sharing my journey, and people were like, that's not modest, that's just winter clothing, or that's just whatever, right? For example, for me, my priority, which I've announced so many times in so many different videos, but a lot of people still pick on me for it, which I get. My whole thing with modest fashion to start with was about making sure that my chest and my behind area was now covered, like all the time. Now, I used to always dress, in my opinion, quite modestly anyway, but I spent about a year of my life, like the last year of my 20s, being quite experimental. I'd gone through a breakup and I wanted to just try and, experiment with my identity and et cetera, right? And I enjoyed it at first, but after a while I hated it. So I then realized from that experience, I wanted to make sure that moving forward, I maintained an intention to be modest around this area and my behind area. However, sometimes I still wear crop tops. Now, in a few videos I did where I show my modest outfits, and some of them I'm wearing a crop top, and naturally you're going to get people who comment and they say, oh, that's not modest, just showing your stomach. But for me personally, I don't find anything immodest about my stomach. So that's what I mean for context. That's what I mean when I say to each their own. You do what you feel is modest by your own standards, your own sense of comfort. And just experiment, have fun, and eventually you'll find a style that works for you. So, eventually, in a couple years, it's coming into summer, and I know I'm going to cop a lot of criticism for it in summertime, but in summertime, I might wear something that is, loose around this area and my behind area, and for me, that's modest, but you might be able to see a small part of my stomach. A lot of people are going to tell me that's not modest. That's fine. It would be by my standards, but not necessarily by someone else's. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if that answered your question, but basically experiment and have fun. Oh, thank you so much. Someone just said you're an absolute motivation to both men and women. Please keep up the great work. I love your balance of religion and secular life. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Do you know, in the beginning, let's talk about cultural clashes in like the West versus the East, for example, in regards to what you've just said, right? I honestly feel like striking a balance between my religious side, and that secular approach or influence from the West is so important. And in the beginning, when I first started to talk about religion online, I was so nervous because I didn't know how it was going to be taken or accepted, because I wanted to share that part. I was getting so many people saying, you're Arab Christian, that's the minority, why don't you shed more light on that? And I always have wanted to, and I'm doing it a bit more now, but I always get so nervous putting myself in a vulnerable situation like that because of the judgment that comes from it, when I personally, as I'm sure people can tell, I'm not the most conservative person religiously. I'm quite spiritual. I'm quite secular with a lot of things. So for example, I know a lot of, I grabbed this and I didn't even drink it. I know a lot of people would have seen my story today where I was talking about things like other religions or sexuality, etc. And I'll say it briefly now. I don't want to go as in depth as I did on the story, because you can go and read it there. But basically, then in my opinion, there needs to be a balance when it comes to what you feel personally, and then how you project that publicly. So, what goes on emotionally or mentally for me, religiously, spiritually, I prefer to call it really, is my business, and it's something that shouldn't be pushed on anyone. And although I like to share it now with you guys, it's not something that it should be ever taken as, being pushed onto anyone. I think I went on that one for a really long time, like a big tangent. Okay, now I gotta go soon. So I'm just going to wrap it up with the last couple of questions. I think my takeaway from today is that you guys don't really like themed conversations. I feel like the Ask Me Anything is probably the best one. But anyway, we'll see how we go from there. All right, what do you like in a meal the most? Zoom. In Arabic we call it zoom. So I like the juice of a dish. So the sauce that comes from things like soups or stir fries, things like that. So if you're Arab, things that we have, for example, in like lubie or beme or fasulia, bazella, all of these dishes that the zoom that comes with it on top of rice, amazing. Good, sensible balance of values. Thank you. Where is your family from in Ireland? My father's family in Ireland, they're from Kildare, which is south of Dublin? South. Yes, it is south of Dublin. I had to think for a second. I'm pretty sure it's south of Dublin. What background are you? I am born and raised in Australia, but my mother is from Palestine and my father is from Ireland. I don't know what you're talking about. She doesn't need to, but she's tried for the experience. I don't know what you're talking about. I must have missed a comment. My favorite culture clash moment, I think, was my sister's engagement when her partner's very English family met our family and made us realize how nosy we are. I definitely can relate to that one. My Arab family can be quite nosy, but I feel like it's not meant in a bad way. I feel like that nosiness is coming from a place of like love and investment. My Irish family are so chilled out. They don't get involved in anything. My grandparents, my dad in particular, they just kind of wait until you let them know something. They will never go fishing for it. But I guess there's good and bad in both. As a Mrs. Brown fan, I want to give a book tip. Brendan Carroll's book that Mrs. Brown is based on, they are called The Young Man. Wait, I don't know what that tip is. Sorry, what is that? What is that about? I just saw Mrs. Brown and Brendan O'Carroll and I was like, oh, I need to read this comment. My parents are Greek but born in Egypt. Nice! What a mix! Oh my gosh, she said noisy, not nosy! Oh my god, I'm so sorry. The comments are moving up so fast that I didn't get a chance to actually to pause and read it properly. I'm so sorry. Okay, wait. Let me pause this here so I can address that comment as well if I can. Okay, wait. Noisy. Okay. So first, let's talk about the noisy part. My Arab family is probably a lot louder than mine, and everybody picks on me for being so loud online, so I guess I can definitely relate to that one. But my Irish family are quite loud as well. They're not exactly the quietest people, but I can totally understand how that could become a culture clash, especially when one half is Middle Eastern. When you see your Muslim family friends next to you, or female friends, sorry, the comment, I have to keep getting it back. It's gone. Next to you wearing hijab for a day. I know you have a veil in Christianity, but you should try the hijab like a Muslim female. Oh, that was your comment. Look, I've gotten a lot of comments online from people telling me that I'm not really sure if it's just the Arab community or if it's just the Islamic community separately as a whole. I don't know. I think people see that I wear a veil and then they straight away they relate that to some likeness of me somehow resonating with Islam. And let's establish one thing that I've mentioned very briefly here and there before, that I actually never go into too much depth, and I'm probably not going to go into too much depth about it now either. But I actually did once upon a time get very invested in learning about Islam and also Judaism. I just find it interesting. Religion for me is something that I find interesting in the same way I find history interesting. So it's not actually that I haven't ever, immersed myself in Islam culturally before anyone says anything. I know people are going to say to me, you shouldn't be doing that in Christianity. That's a conversation for another day. But I have done that before. I have, immersed myself in it culturally before. Knowledge is a beautiful thing. I know people are going to criticize me for it, but at the end of the day, knowledge to me is very important. And I love when I'm in a friendship circle where majority of my friends are Muslim, and I'm able to hold the conversation that they're having about religion, because I've had enough, time spent researching, investing my time acquiring knowledge on the matter. And the same goes for Judaism. Now, I'm not really well versed in many other religions. Obviously, I'm not as well versed in any religion like I am my own, because it's the one I actually practice. But yeah, I would love eventually to have time to be able to learn more about other religions as well. But yeah, I'm not about to go put a hijab on, like someone was saying. Sorry, I just read a funny comment. I'm so sorry. I know. I'm definitely not about to. I'm so sorry. I'm not laughing at what I'm talking about. I'm just laughing at what I read. I'm definitely not about to go put a hijab on around my friends just for heck the sake of it. I feel like that would probably be inappropriate unless I was considering something otherwise, because it's not just heck, anything. It's a important piece of religious clothing in someone else's religion. Just like for me, my veil, which I have a bunch here, right? Just like for me, my veil is so important to me. I'm not about to go and put on someone else's religious item just heck for the sake of it. That's like somebody taking one of my veils and just heck for the sake of it, just putting it on. And I would, unless they're doing it for respectful reasons, or they're doing it for knowledge purposes, etc. Just heck to just go and be really laissez-faire, as they say, about someone else's religion. I'm not really keen on that. Okay, let's wrap this up, guys. Australia, mate. Sure am. I just saw someone. See, this is why I'm laughing, because sometimes you guys send really funny comments. Someone's just sent the comment saying, Australia, mate. Your energy is mashallah. Thank you. Finish me tea before it's time to go. Old fan of yours. Thank you so much. I'm not saying it in a bad way. I was just saying that you should do it for the experience, but I understand and respect your decision. Thank you so much. No, I appreciate what you're trying to say. And I don't disagree necessarily with you. I just, yeah. It's just, it's not something I would do casually, like that. When did you move down under? I was born in Australia, mate. Wait. Oh my gosh, I said that in an Irish accent. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I was born in Australia, mate. And sorry, my accent, I know sometimes it's confusing because it's influenced from my families. But yeah, I was definitely born here. Your paternal family is Irish, so you don't need to follow hijab. Listen, I'm really against that concept. So I've made videos about it before. It's one thing in my Arab culture that I've never embraced is this notion that you follow your father. I love my father very, very much. It's got nothing to do with him personally. I believe that I take from both equally. I'm not going to allow one to dominate over the other culturally, religiously. I take from both equally, and that's it. I just saw someone's username Bernadette and it caught my attention. Hi, Bernadette. Do you celebrate holidays from both cultures? Both my families are Catholic, so a lot of our celebrations are religiously based. So yes, I definitely do. Things like Easter and things like Christmas are the most important things. So yeah, I definitely do celebrate from both. But yeah. Oh yeah. So I definitely don't follow. So follow just my father's side. So like, for example, the veil comes from my mother's church. Like my mother's family's church wear this veil, right? Now I'm sure years and years ago on my father's Catholic side, they would have worn veils at one point. There was veil wearing in the Catholic Church, generally speaking. However, I got this from my mum's side, so I don't sit there and just follow strictly my father's side. I don't like that aspect of my Arab culture. That is probably one of the things that I've never been able to accept. I know what people say. It's just not. It's not something I like at all. It's 50-50, mate. And like, maybe it's the 2022 in me, maybe it's my generation, but it's 50-50. Lovely way to spend my drinking time. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I honestly cannot wait to meet you. As soon as I get to England, I'm coming straight to meet you, sis. Your Irish family is from Kildare, right? Yes. When did they move to Australia? My granny moved in the 70s. My Irish family officially moved in the late 80s. You sure you're Aussie? I am positive I am Australian. All right, last couple of questions. I always forget there's this question button. I'm so sorry. When are you coming to the UK, specifically London? I haven't had a chance to update you guys and I need to do it. I'm going to make a story post on Instagram about it, hopefully maybe tomorrow. My trip has been postponed. Due to family issues, I'm still going, but it's been postponed. Unfortunately, I was meant to be leaving in literally, I think, like a week. Unfortunately, I have had to delay it because there's just some issues that came up. So I don't know exactly when, but as soon as I find out and confirm everything, I will definitely let you guys know. I can't wait to go back to London. I'm hanging for it. All right, guys. Oh no, I thought there was okay. I thought there were no questions coming in, and then I checked and it wasn't scrolling up at all. Okay, wait. Where'd you get your Scooby-Doo plush from? Scooby-Doo-Doo! My partner Musa got it for me from Queensland. So when we went to Movie World, I had to think, there's like a bunch of different theme parks. I had to think which one for a second. When we went to Movie World, he got it for me there. I love Scooby-Doo. Let me see. I'm not from Melbourne. My partner's from Melbourne. I'm from Sydney. I'm Muslim and I love Christmas time. That we don't celebrate it, but I love the togetherness and especially the snow in the UK. Christmas is my #1 favorite time of the year. And you don't have to be Christian to like Christmas. I understand that in some religions, it's not acceptable. People like say that it's not acceptable to, take part in other religions. That's a separate issue. That's someone's belief. However, from my perspective, I honestly see the beauty in embracing the cultural aspect of it without the religion. So if you're not Christian, like obviously for me as a Christian, the huge part of it has got to be Jesus and the Christian spirit that comes from that, right? Which is beautiful in its own way. It's actually beautiful, but the commercial aspect of Christmas, I know in Christianity it's frowned upon, but the commercial aspect, the spirit of Christmas that comes from the commercialization is also beautiful, and I'll always argue that. The spirit you see with children, especially children that aren't even Christian, but when they see Santa and the Christmas tree and presents and the smile that comes on their face, heck, I'm 30, and the smile that comes on my face when I see shopping centers start getting ready for Christmas, I love it. It's amazing. It's just, I love Christmas. No matter what part of the world you're from, I definitely can see how enjoying that Christmas spirit is amazing, and it's just so enjoyable. You're looking for new friends. Hello. Hi. I'm sure in England, because you've got the UK flag. I'm pretty sure somewhere in the UK, you'll be able to meet some nice people. I remember there was a lot of nice people when I was over there. How old are you? I'm 30. I've been to Birmingham, England before. I actually stayed there for a few days. My dad and I stayed there for a while, but yeah, so I have definitely been before. It was lovely. I have never visited Palestine before. No, inshallah, one day I would love to. I was meant to go 2 years ago. No, COVID has been more than that now. 3 years ago. And then COVID hit and that ruined all my plans. Your hair is shining. Thank you so much. Stick to the hair care routine, guys. The hair care routine that I shared with you guys, honest to God, it really makes a big difference. Every single week, just put in those like leave-in moisturizers and the argan oil, and honestly, it makes a huge difference after time. Right. Let's wrap this up. Do you like teaching? For the most part. For the most part, I like it. But it has its days where I'm like, why did I become a teacher? But for the most part, it is nice. I'm staying tuned here from the last 40 minutes. Please say hi to me. Hi! One of my teacher's birthdays is literally the 25th, and she always says that all the decorations and holidays are for her. She's Muslim, by the way. I love that. My birthday is New Year's Day, and growing up, my mom always used to tell me that the whole world celebrated my birthday. And so she was always like, look, the fireworks, they're for you because it's your birthday. And I believed it until I was like 7. Actually, when someone on my story today asked me what was the stupidest thing that you think you ever believed as a kid, and that should probably be that should have probably been my answer. The fact that I believe that the New Year's fireworks were for me because my birthday is New Year's Day. Anyway, random question: did your family ever teach you any Gaelic Irish? Like they've taught me the odd things, but they're not fluent in Irish themselves. Perhaps because the school, like they're country folk, like they grew up on farms. It's not really something that it was really forced in their time, let alone in their area. However, I know now it's something that people force a lot more, trying to salvage the language and preserve it, which rightly so. But yeah, it's not something like I could say, like, 60 smosh the holla, or garmila mahagot, okay, or no habare. They're like the only Irish words that I'm really, hi Ali, thank you. They're like the only really real Irish phrases that I can say, aside from a bad one, which I'm not going to say on live. But yeah. I'm gonna, wait, I want to answer this question. This is going to be my last question, and then I got to go, guys. Hey Bernadette, I'm an aspiring content creator, and I'm not really confident about being in front of the camera. Do you have a tip? Love your content, by the way. Yes. When I first started, we were in COVID, so I had the privilege of just having a lot of spare time. And in that spare time, so if you have any spare time, what I'm trying to liken this to is, if you have any spare time, do the same thing that I'm about to say. In my spare time, I started recording a lot of videos that never saw the light of day. So I started because the thing is, what I realized as a content creator, I wasn't just shy in the beginning about what everyone else was going to see. I was shy just watching myself. I was like, is that what my voice sounds like? And then I'd be like, oh, is that what I look like? The more I filmed, the more I started to get comfortable in the way I expressed myself, the more I started to realize what angles I liked, what worked well with the camera. You just need to get comfortable with yourself. You need to figure yourself out. It's like when people ask me, for advice on fashion and things like that, and I will always say, you need to spend time figuring out what works for you, right? Figure out what makes you comfortable, because every person is going to be so incredibly different. So take time to film some content. I'm assuming you're talking about videos. Sorry, you could be talking about photos, but the same thing could be said about photos. Figure out your angles, figure out what works for you the most, and then capitalize on that. So I eventually realized that filming things like, skits worked for me. And I eventually figured out, how to make it work. What place in where I would film at home was the best lighting, what, angles were the best way to portray the storyline that I was trying to get across in my skit, etc. Take time, experiment, figure it out. Don't think the first thing that you record has to go out in public. It really doesn't. Just spend some time figuring out what works best for you. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. Okay, let's just scroll down. Thank you for doing these. They're so much fun. You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoy them. Good night. Thank you so much. I was the same when I was on TikTok. Yeah, honestly, just in the beginning, I was so awkward at first. I look back at some of my old content and I cringe. But in the beginning, you just gotta figure it out. Spend some time, go easy on yourself. Don't be so hard, and just eventually, have fun with it in the beginning. And actually, you can always have fun with it. But in the beginning, just purely make it as a chill thing that no one else has to see. Anyway, all right, guys. Thank you so much. You're welcome. And honestly, whenever I go live again, next week, I go live every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Come back and ask me again, Kenza. Come back, ask me again, and I'll gladly talk some more about it. Maybe that can be your theme. I know nobody really wanted to stay on the theme this week. But yeah, maybe that can be the theme for next week if you want to come on, and we can talk more about it if you like. So if that be the case, then I'll see you same time next week. I know I postponed this week to Thursday, but next week I'll be back 9 p.m. on the Wednesday, inshallah. And yeah, we can talk about it then. Hi from Chicago. Hi. Well, hello, and good morning or good night, wherever you guys are in the world, from Australia, and inshallah I'll see you guys all next week. Thank you so much for joining, but it is time to go now, guys. Have a good night. Yalla, goodbye, guys.